Week 13 and ready to get back at it. I don't know if you played college football at all this week, but Wednesday action, you could have been in dead last at halftime, and by the end of the game, you were winning contest. But that's why we love action. It doesn't matter what point of the game it is. You're always in it, no matter what. Welcome to the SHIPIT Nation College Football Show. My name is Bill. Put $1 in front of it. You'll find me on Twitter and Discord. And we're here for another week of college football. Last week, not so great with the injuries and, just flat out lack of usage for some guys. However, the night slate was a lot nicer to your boy than the main slate was. So we'll call it a break-even day. But we're back at it for week 13. And we're excited for it. It's been a great week in the SHIPIT Nation community. Here on YouTube, if you could hit that subscribe, if you're not already subscribed to your channel, I think we're about 1,200 away from 10,000. And once we get to 10,000 subscribers, we got some pretty good giveaways planned. It's definitely something you're going to want to be a part of. We bring you these shows free. We never want our shows to be behind a paywall. So the subscribe, also free for you. That's the trade that we hope for. And we hope that you can give us that. And it makes it worth it for us. Like it gives us what we need here on YouTube. Just a simple like and subscribe. And then we got some giveaways. Once we get to 10K, we're so close. You can be the one to help us get there. But we're going to jump right into this Week 13 slate. It's really tight pricing this week, so it's going to be a little bit tougher to build those lineups. You want to get those studs in. You want to get those workhorses in, those target machines, those air raid quarterbacks that put up big numbers. But you're going to have to take some stands this week. Let's get right into it with Ole Miss at Florida. The spread has moved to 11. I had seen 10 earlier in the week and some 9.5 even, I think. But it's moving the way of Ole Miss, and that's because they're healthy. Trey Harris, Antoine Wells, Jackson Dart, Jordan Watkins all showed up on the injury report earlier this week. They were upgraded from probable to active, at least, according to the SEC student availability report. And then Logan Diggs, the LSU transfer, he might actually be active this game. They said he was close, and this is the most he's done in practice all season. So we could see him get a little bit of action. But really, it's the Jackson Dart show. He's got his full core of wide receivers. Trey Harris, his favorite target, is looking like he's finally going to be back. We played that cat and mouse game with Lane Kiffin for a few weeks there. Is he going to play? Is he not? He's dressed. He's in sweats. Looks like he's going to be good to go, and we know that he is a target machine. But you got to pay for it. That's the thing. Is that where you want to spend your money? That's the decision you have to make this week. You're probably going to hear me say that a lot. It's just the way of the slate for Week 13 is that you just got to figure out where you want to spend your money. If you do want to discount Caden Lee, Jordan Watkins, Antoine Wells, all on the field, always got the tight ends there, Prescorn and Wright. All of them really solid options. With Harris being in the 9Ks, if everybody's back, it's tough to say. It's all subjective at this point. Have we seen Harris with this fully healthy core of receivers since week 1, week 2, maybe? It'll be interesting to see. This will be the first time they're all healthy without Henry Parrish, maybe with Logan Diggs. So there's a lot of different ways it could go. And you got cheap guys in the backfield. If Bentley's going to get the bulk of the carries, 4,200 is a very good price for him. On the Florida side, home dogs, college football has been weird this year. I wouldn't put it past them to win this game. Not that I'm predicting it, but they're one win away from being bowl eligible. So they're definitely going to be coming to play. I mean, they do play Florida State next week. So, take that for what you will. That's a big rivalry, though. So you never want to go into a rivalry game, needing to win to make a bowl. But Lagway, 5K, he did not run very much last week. That was very, very noticeable. He's got that hamstring injury that must, still probably lingering a little bit, or at the very least, he doesn't want to re-aggravate it. And so you're going to have to rely on him getting there through the air, which he can do. I just don't know if he can against this Ole Miss defense. Baugh is still the top runner. Even with Johnson back, Baugh got the bulk of the carries. And then it was Jackson before Johnson. We could see that level out a little bit more. But, Baugh is clearly the best runner in that backfield last week. And then Elijah Badger, 10 targets in his, after he missed a game, he was back right away, 10 targets from Lagway. So, they're cheap, but Badger is still the clear number one there. You're really mostly looking at the Ole Miss side for this game, unless you're getting some real gross game stacks and one-offs. Much better game to look at, North Carolina at Boston College. Tighter spread, decent total, actually about the same total as the last game, I think, but a tighter, more competitive game. Always has a chance to go off. We got Jacoby Criswell at quarterback. He's kind of in that $7,000 price range. That's right in the range this week where you feel like you want to go up to get somebody or go down to save money. So that's a tough price to click. If you're stacking this game, maybe. The one thing I will say, though, Omari and Hampton, he's kind of starting to get in that Ashton Jeanty category where it doesn't matter how much he costs. You're going to look at him and you're probably going to pay for him. He's set for 30-plus rushes, 2 billion yards on the ground. He even had 5 targets last game. So here's the thing. UNC has been running. That's all they've been doing. The last 2 games, 108 rushing attempts and 39 passing attempts. And in the last game, Omari Hampton was the target leader. He's tied with Kobe Paysor with 5 targets on the day. So everything is going through Hampton right now. And it 9,600 probably still isn't enough for the usage he's going to get. Like I said, Paysor led the team in targets last week against Wake. Bryson Nesbitt has been out since week 7 though, and he's still second on the team in targets. So that kind of tells you what you need to know about these wide receivers. And then Boston College, that team's just kind of a mess. Outside of a couple of games, it's been more advantageous to throw on North Carolina, but that's not what Boston College has been doing over the last couple of games. Robichaux's had 21 and 28 carries. Trayshawn Ward has just kind of disappeared. He's been on the field, but in a limited capacity over the last 2 games, 4 total rushing attempts, 1 total target. Jordan McDonald has kind of been taking over as the second running back that's in the rotation. And then Turbo Richard, we don't know if he's going to be back. He could definitely see the field if he does. The running volume has kind of capped Grayson James a little bit, even though he's cheap and it's an okay matchup. If they do let him loose, 6,400 is an okay price if you want to get some game stacks going. But most of it's going to Lewis Bond. It's a tough wide receiver room right now. Harris, Morales, and Franklin, all tight ends. But that's really what it has been. Skeet's been out. He's going to be out again. Bradley's been out. He's questionable this week. Dino Tomlin returned. He had 27 snaps, but 1 target, and that's only his 2nd target of the season. So you're getting gross with the Boston College wide receivers. But if, like Dino Tomlin, if he could randomly have a 6 target, 5 reception, and 2 touchdown game, it's probably not going to happen, but he is an experienced wide receiver. He did play last year, and he's missed a few weeks. So if he's back and healthy, but like I said, it's really Hampton and maybe Robichaux, and then you're moving on probably. Big spread, Wake Forest at Miami. Miami winning into the ACC championship. They still got that shot at the playoff. So they're going to be playing tough. The one thing is Miami hasn't really been able to put teams away this year. If you just look at their schedule, they've beaten teams, and they've beaten some teams pretty handily. But like Florida State, for example, they won by double digits. I think it was maybe even 3 scores. But that game was close at halftime. It was a tough game. The score is a lot closer than the scoreboard showed. And even so, even if they do blow teams out, they're still giving up a lot of points. Guys have had big games against Miami. Samir Haggins for Duke had 9 for 139 and 1. Ja'Cory Brooks for Louisville had 6 for 107 and 2. Even Sean Atkins at South Florida had 11 for 125. So you look at this wide receiver room for Wake Forest, and you're like, well, there's, somebody's got to be there. They're pretty cheap. Donovan Green had 8 targets last game. It seems like he's starting to elevate back to that wide receiver 1 after he missed some time. So 4,700 is a really fair price for him. And that kind of puts Hank Bachmeier into the conversation too. I don't love him necessarily, but at 6,300, if this is going to be a track meet, it could be like a 52-35 game. And then somebody from Wake Forest is definitely going to get there. And Bachmeier at 6,300 doesn't need a whole lot. But then Damon Claiborne is just a usage monster. If you can't get up to all of those stud wide running backs in the 8 and 9K range, Damon Claiborne's not the worst. It's more of a volume play. And Miami's given up almost 5 yards a carry in 3 of the last 4 games. And that included Florida State. Claiborne's had 20 carries in 4 straight games, 3 catches in 3 of those games. So it's just a usage thing for him. And then on the Miami side, just look at those prices. Kind of tells you all you need to know. Cam Ward, you know what he is, but he's expensive. Restrepo, you know what he is, but he's expensive. Horton is priced up. Really, if you want to stack Cam Ward, it's tough if you want to get those good running backs in too. So why not look at a guy like Sam Brown? He's in the 3Ks on the highest team total on the slate. and he's averaging 5 targets per game. He had 6 targets last time out, and it just provides that salary relief that you're going to be looking for. So I don't mind him. Arroyo had the big touchdown last week, but that's kind of all he did in that game. And then this running back room, it did lean a little bit more Damian Martinez last game, but it had been a 50-50 split before that. So it's tough to really say if that's because of what the game script was with Georgia Tech, getting the upset. Could they be back to similar, that 50-50 split that we were used to? It's tough to say. So for me, that's kind of a stay away, especially if there's going to be a blowout and we could see more of those, 3rd and 4th string guys too. I don't know. It's just tough. I want to play these Miami guys, but pricing is just really hard. I would imagine you're going to be different if you can find stacks that work. Another game that is catching my eye because of the total and the potential shootout, SMU at Virginia. It is a 9.5-point spread, but SMU's defense, again, not bad, but they're not as good as they were earlier in the year. They've shown a few leaks. But we'll start with the SMU side. They're win out and they're in the ACC championship, just kind of like Miami. So they're going to be playing tough. But last game, wide receiver usage might be as condensed as it's ever been for SMU. And by that, I mean only 4 guys had 5 targets. It was Hudson had a big game. It was Daniels, Keyshawn Smith, and then Matthew Hibner. He played a ton, but he didn't really do anything last week. And then Romello Brinson, he could be back this week. He's missed a few weeks, so it could muddle down that wide receiver room a little bit more. But look at the pricing again. You're looking for cheap wide receivers this week. You could go Hudson, Daniels, Smith, Dixon. I mean, they're all on the table, but the usage has really been going to Brashard Smith. We're not used to seeing a running back workhorse at SMU, and Brashard Smith is still getting it. He's got 5 targets in each of the last 2 games on top of his upper teens to lower 20 rushing attempts. And then Kevin Jennings, he's a dual threat quarterback, but he's been getting there with his arm lately. He hasn't even need to use his legs. You can get to Virginia through the air, so I'm not sure he's going to need that running, but the upside is there. If he does need to use his legs, he can. So this SMU side is in a great spot, especially if you can get the wide receiver right, and maybe it's 2 wide receivers this week. Virginia side, Anthony Calandria, coach said he's going to start. I don't think he's hurt or anything. He just hasn't been playing very well. We saw Tony Muskett come in last game, so I don't know. We know Calandria can run. Will he? This is just tough. Like I said, SMU has shown a few leaks in their defense. They're giving up, they've given up 25 or more points in 3 straight games, but I want to be able to take a chance on Calandria, but I just don't know how invested he's going to be, especially after what happened. It could just be a lone dart that, maybe for some reason he gets motivated. It's a home game for Virginia, so you never know. Xavier Brown's basically been in a 50-50 split with Kobe Pace for the last couple of games, and then outsnapped him last game, and then he had more usage than Kobe Pace. So Brown's he hasn't really taken over. I wouldn't call it that. He's just getting a little more of the lean. And then Malachi Fields priced down in the 6Ks. His ceiling has been pretty much non-existent since that Louisville game, especially now with Chris Tyree back. That's throwing more into the mix. Neville, he'd gotten a few more looks and a little bit more production than Tyree. SMU, like I said, SMU's defense is solid. So, I mean, I don't want to say that they're going to give up 25 points again to Virginia or more, but, the pathway's there. Jaden Gibson, he's a guy who hasn't done much, but he had a hamstring injury in practice, so that could condense this wide receiver usage just, a little bit more to where you might see another target for Fields, Neville, and Tyree, or, even J.R. Wilson or something. But mostly looking at the SMU side, another potentially gross stack if Virginia comes to play, but SMU is where I'm at. This game, I mean, Indiana went out and in, Ohio State went out and in. It's, maybe there's a 3-way ties scenario that would make it weird, but I'm not going to look into that too hard yet. It's probably more fun real life game than it is DFS game. Tough to play any of these Indiana guys on the road at the Horseshoe. Miles Price is got hurt. So, it seems like he's going to play. Maybe he's not 100%, but it kind of throws, it spreads out the usage a little bit more in the wide receiver room. I mean, Surratt played almost every snap last time out against Michigan. So he's definitely still the number 1 guy. Priced okay. He's probably too cheap for his production, but maybe a little expensive for the slate. And you'll understand as you start building lineups. I don't know if you can afford a 5.2K wide receiver. Maybe we'll get some value that opens up before kickoff. That'll help us, navigate roster construction a little bit better. But that's kind of where I'm at right now. This backfield's gotten a little weird too. Lawton actually outsnapped Ellison against Michigan, so that makes it more difficult. The matchup's already there too. And then Curtis Rourke, again, kind of in that middle 7 to 7.5 range. That hard to pull the trigger. And Ohio State, the clear favorite, good team total, but these guys are expensive. And Indiana's defense is no slouch. They got a stud defensive tackle that, I was already concerned about the running game for Ohio State a little bit, but even more so now that Seth McLaughlin, their center, tore his Achilles, he's going to be out. They were already down a left tackle and had shuffled their line around a little bit, and they were finally starting to get some chemistry, but now they lose their starting center. And the backup center for Ohio State's good. It's just going to throw chemistry, a wrench into the chemistry with that O-line, and we don't know what we're going to get. Maybe it's not a big deal. It honestly might not be. But if you're looking at the Ohio State side, Will Howard's just, again, expensive. Judkins and Henderson are going to split. It's tough to pay those prices, especially you want to try to find more for those big studs or, go down for value. Jeremiah Smith's the guy I'm looking at. He just continues to produce every single week. But even Carnell Tate is priced up in the mid 5Ks. Guy Scott was injured. He left the last game, so I don't know if he's going to play. Kaczmarek is still questionable, probably not going to play. So I don't know what this wide receiver rotation is going to look like behind Smith, Egbuka, and Tate. So those guys are expensive. It just makes it tough. I'll enjoy watching this football game. I don't know that I'm going to be taking too many pieces from it for DFS. Kentucky at Texas. Kentucky's a 20-point dog on the road, so it basically tells you all that you need to know. They don't have any offensive players at least skill players on the injury report, so that's good. But actually, Gavin Wimsatt, I don't know if he's hurt or not, but we have seen some Cutter Boley play quarterback for Kentucky. They played Murray State last time out, so you got to take that with a grain of salt. They might have just been resting Vandegrift. They didn't need him. This running back room is healthy. Train and Wilcox, Sumo, all of these guys could see significant time. And then, Dane Key has the upside. Again, Barry and Brown missed last game, but again, Murray State. So these guys are cheap. If you find a touchdown or, like a 6 catch for 50 yards and a touchdown at these prices, okay. But I don't know if that's a risk you want to take. On the Texas side, Quinn Ewers back down to earth, I guess. And just the same old Quinn Ewers are used to seeing. 8,200 might be as cheap as we've seen him this year, but still probably not cheap enough. Kentucky's defense is solid. They give up less than 200 yards passing per game. They do allow 130 rushing yards per game, which in college football isn't necessarily a ton. And it's skewed by one game against Auburn where they gave up 320. So I don't know that I want to attack this defense. Texas is one of those teams that might be able to penetrate it, but I'm not really considering Ewers at that price. The running back room is still a nightmare to me. Gibson went from being the highest producing back to barely seeing the field. Blue and Wisner are still involved in the pass game too, so you could look there. They're healthy. Helm is priced up in the 4Ks finally, but he's still, really the target guy. He's still getting the most targets, so maybe you look at him. Matthew Golden has been on a TD streak, touchdown machine. He's only got 11 targets over the last 3 games, but 5 of those targets have ended in touchdowns. So that's one thing you can look at. And one thing I'm really looking at probably the most in this game is that DeAndre Moore is questionable. He showed up on the report. Last game, Silas Bolden moved into the slot and had his best, maybe his best game of the season. He had, I think, 5 targets and, 3 receptions, which if he can find the box, three catches and 25 yards and a touchdown, we need to find value on the slate. So at 3,200, if we get news that Moore's going to sit or if we get news that Bolden is starting, either one of those things would help me get to Silas Bolden a little bit. Moving on, Colorado at Kansas, another big game. Oh, Texas is winning in too, in case you guys didn't know that. But Colorado win both games and they're in. If they lose one of them, they'd need some help. So teams are going to want to win, but there's just a little bit more at stake here. They are 2.5-point favorites on the road at Kansas, who just upset BYU and put Colorado in better position. So Colorado might thank them before the game. But everyone's kind of priced up a little bit. Augusta's in the 4Ks. I mean, Shedeur is still kind of in that okay range. We've definitely seen him higher than that. Hunter, again, he's not priced up, but 9K is still expensive. Wester's one of those guys that's priced up. Shepard is finally priced up. Jimmy Horn is probable to play. So, if we do see him go at 4,200, again, a cheap option. Draylon Miller he had a big game. I mean, Timmons outsnapped him last game, but Miller had the better game overall. And, Amarion Miller shouldn't be there. I don't know why he's still there. He's out, but that's neither here nor there. Kansas side, Jalen Daniels, sub 7K Jalen Daniels. I'm still taking a shot on him. He has looked pretty good recently. His price is fair, and you're going to need a cheap quarterback in all likelihood, at least one. So Daniels is on my radar for sure. Even with the high shot back, Devin Neal is still getting a fair amount of usage. So 7,500 is a fair price for him. Again, in that range where if you can't get up to those 8 to 9K running backs at all three spots, if you do need to save a $1,000 or $2, go to Devin Neal. And then in this wide receiver room, Lawrence Arnold is questionable right now, but he left the last game and is now considered highly questionable, which that probably just means he's doubtful. But they're going to look to guys like Emilian and Wilson to fill that void. But to me, what that says is it probably just means more running for Daniels and Neal, more pass catching for Luke Grimm and Quentin Skinner. That usage is probably just going to start to funnel. So those are the guys you're probably looking at the Kansas side. This isn't a bad game to game stack. Again, it's just going to be a little bit more expensive than you probably want to do on this slate. Again, another one, high team, like 63-point total, 3-point spread. It's just about where you want to spend your money. Do you want to spend it on Dylan Rizek at 6K in this game environment? I mean, this is the sort of thing where Dylan Rizek, a few dump offs to RJ Harvey, and RJ Harvey can do the work to get Rizek there. It's one of those situations because we know that RJ Harvey is a dude. Even at 9,800, he's in a prime matchup here. You can throw the ball on West Virginia. You've been able to do that all season, but Baylor showed you could run on them too. So whatever UCF wants to do, they're probably going to be able to do at a fairly decent rate. The one thing I will say is that UCF isn't throwing the ball a ton. They're definitely running more. They threw the ball 34 times last game. 22 of those targets went to two guys in the wide receiver room, Jacoby Jones and Kobe Hudson. So where the usage is going in the wide receiver room. They're fair in the low 5K. So I don't hate that if you're stacking UCF. Other than Harvey, it is a very cheap stack. Same with the West Virginia side. I mean, Garrett Green just absolutely exploded last week, and it kept West Virginia in contention. There's actually a scenario that if West Virginia wins out, they need a 3-way tie with TCU and Colorado, and they'd get in based on conference opponent record or something. I don't know. Common conference opponent record. It doesn't matter. West Virginia still has a shot. So they're still playing hard. And Garrett Green kind of showed it last week. So he's got the dual threat. We all witnessed it. He could have not played a snap in the second half and still got there, I think. Jaheim White, CJ Donaldson still splitting. Jaheim White was just a lot more productive. White out snapped him, or no, actually Donaldson out snapped White last week, 56 to 43. White just got double the attempts. So the usage is there for White, even though Donaldson's on the field a little bit more. And then in this wide receiver room, Traylon Ray's out for the year. So we could see a little bit more Justin Robinson. We were expecting maybe Jaden Bray to come back, but he had a setback in practice. To me, this really means it gives Hudson Clement an opportunity to become the alpha, like the true alpha. It always seems like he's kind of been teetering there, but this is a shot to show it. It is a great game-to-game stack if you can find a way to do it with two cheap quarterbacks. There is one expensive wide receiver, but everybody else is like there's salary savings in this game. Texas Tech at Oklahoma State. If you didn't like the last total, this one's even higher. And believe it or not, Texas Tech still has a chance to make the Big 12 championship. It's chaotic. I don't know how to explain all of it, but basically what Texas Tech needs is a 6-way tie for first. And then they need certain teams to win and lose to get the tiebreaker leverage over the next couple of weeks. So the chance is still there. My favorite scenario is that Texas Tech and TCU end up in the Big 12 championship, was apparently somehow still possible. But that's what I'm rooting for. Anyway, on the Texas Tech side, I love seeing a $6,500 Baron Morton with a team total of 35. you're going to need the salary savings. So he's definitely on my radar. Taj Brooks is Taj Brooks. Oklahoma State's real bad against the run. They give up 5.9 a carry. 175 yards to TCU was their first sub 200-yard game allowed on the ground since Tulsa in week 3. And that's because TCU only ran it 28 times. So Taj Brooks is set up for a prime day, but Texas Tech can throw the ball if they want to too. Oklahoma State's faced mostly running teams, but they gave up 293 through the air to TCU. They gave up 304 to Arizona State through the air. Basically, any way you want to get to this Cowboys defense, you can. Josh Kelly has had double-digit targets in 7 games this season, including 11 and 18 over the last 2. He's got 100 yards or more in 2 straight games. Caleb Douglas, you get the salary savings. He's still viable, but he's kind of fallen off a little bit lately. Only 6 and 7 targets the last 2, 51 yards combined in those 2 games. Koy Eakin's still out there. He's kind of mid with targets. Jalen Conyers is interesting because Mason Tharp went down last game. So Jalen Conyers got a lot more snaps and ran a lot more routes. And he had 2 touchdowns. So the upside is there. He is questionable though. So, if he can go, 3,600 is great. If he can't, we're probably going to see John Carlos Miller. So I don't know. You want a piece of this team, if you can stack it even with Taj Brooks and one of these pass catchers and a quarterback. Again, you're looking for cheap options, and Texas Tech outside of Kelly has them. On the Oklahoma State side, Alan Bowman is still starting, and I really don't know why. It doesn't really matter why. He's playing quarterback against Texas Tech, so we got to at least look at him. 291 yards passing or more in 3 straight games. They had that 506-yard game to Abilene Christian earlier in the year. I feel like I bring that up every time Tech is on the slate because it's relevant. They haven't gotten that much better, if they have at all. The one thing I will say is that Maialuaki Smith has seen some time over the last game or 2. Honestly, I don't see why he wouldn't get time in this. This is the first irrelevant game Oklahoma State's played in since 2005, which basically means every game since 2005, they have been alive for the postseason. They're not this week. It's the first time in almost 20 years. But they're probably still going to run Bowman out there. At least we know what we have with Bowman. He's not good at football anymore, but he's playing Texas Tech. Ollie Gordon has been getting better at football. We're starting to see a little bit more of the old Ollie Gordon, a couple of 100-yard games. He had 36 DK a few weeks ago. So you can find success against Tech on the ground. Maybe he catches a couple of passes and gets a long screen or something like that. And then this wide receiver room, it's tightened up a little bit because Talon Shetron's out. It seems like it's just funneled more to Presley and Stribling. Owens has kind of fallen off a little bit lately. So, he is a little bit cheaper. I don't know. Without Shetron, this Shotomide King guy is seeing a little bit more run. Again, a 3,300 guy and a 31-point team total. Maybe you want to get gross because, Owens didn't get a single target on 27 routes last game. So it's tough to say exactly what's going on there. But with this you want pieces of this game. This game's going to be all gas, no break. There's no defense on either of these teams. So find your pieces. Brooks is obviously the stud of all studs. Just got to find that salary relief. BYU at Arizona State. BYU went out and in. If they lose, they need help. Arizona State, they also need to win. There is a random scenario that Arizona State could win out and still miss the Big 12 championship. But, these teams both basically have to win out and win the Big 12 championship if they want to get that automatic qualifier, because the Mountain West and AAC are currently ranked higher, I think, with Army and Tulane. So Big 12 might not even get the AQ. But for now, we're looking at a tight spread in a game that is a lower total, but we've seen these tighter spread, low total games, a couple of touchdowns, and all of a sudden it's one of the higher games on the slate as far as point totals go. Jake Retzlaff is fine. He's probably a little bit too expensive. ASU has been better against the pass than the run, so if Retzlaff can use his legs, maybe the upside's there a little bit. LJ Martin's been leading the backfield, but Rapati's still involved, and Rapati had a receiving touchdown last week. We also saw a little bit of Moa, so I don't know if I can pay $7K for LJ Martin. And then in the wide receiver room, it's basically Roberts and Lassiter. Lassiter actually has more targets, but Roberts has more receptions. So you're probably looking at Roberts a little bit more. It's $200 savings to boot. And then Keelan Marion is one guy I'm looking at. He's had 5 targets last game. It was his most of the season, and he's starting to get some more carries out of the backfield. 4,300, maybe a little bit too steep for him. Cody Epps, who's had a significant role on this team previously. Tried coming back from injury last game, only played one snap, and he couldn't keep going. So maybe we'll see him back a value play from this game if you want a piece of BYU. On the Arizona State side, Sam Leavitt, he's been on a heater, but he's 7,500. And I honestly don't know if you can afford a $7,500 Sam Leavitt. If I was going to pay $7,500 for a quarterback, he might be my top option though, just because of how well he's been playing. 27 in 2 of the last 3 and 20 in the other game for DraftKings points. So, I don't mind it. Scatabo was back after missing a game. He's right back to it too. He had 25 rushing attempts. He wasn't super efficient with it. He had 4 catches as well, but still didn't really hit what we need for DFS purposes. If he had found the end zone, he would have been fine. But BYU is considered to be a really good team and a sloggy team. Maybe it slows down the game, but Oklahoma State, Utah, and UCF were all able to run the ball on them. And with Scatabo being involved in the pass game too, you can look at him 9,400. I don't know if you can take him over some of those 8K guys, but we'll see. And then Jordan Tyson, the reason I cashed on the night slate last week, maybe solely because of Jordan Tyson. When they do throw the ball, he's it. Like Mateer had a touchdown last week, but when they throw, Jordan Tyson is by far the number one and the first option on almost every single passing play, it seems like. So, Tyson and Scatabo, I don't mind. Leavitt, I don't mind. There's a lot of guys I don't mind from this game, like Roberts and Lassiter. It's weird pricing in a lower total game. So it might just be a little bit tougher to get there for some of them. Another low total, big spread, Penn State at Minnesota. Penn State needs to keep winning. Even if they keep winning, the likelihood that they get into the Big Ten championship isn't great, but they're still live for the college football playoffs. So they just need to keep winning. And they took care of business at Purdue last week. Penn State is one of those teams that you feel like they're going to let you down at some point, but what they do, they handle unranked teams and they let you down against teams that are ranked like 18th or something like that. Drew Aller, again, in that price range where I don't know if I can get there. He's coming off of a huge game against Purdue, but who couldn't have a huge game against Purdue? The one thing I will say is that Rutgers threw for 240 yards on Minnesota, which might as well be 350 for most teams. So the opportunity is there, especially when you have a guy like Tyler Warren, who is able to, make things happen in all aspects of the game. You can run the ball. I wouldn't be surprised if he could throw the ball better than Aller too at this point. But Minnesota has struggled with big body receivers. We saw that in the Rutgers game. We saw it in the Illinois game before Pat Bryant went down. Zachary Franklin ended up doing the same thing. So Warren, even at 7,700, I know I don't probably want to pay up too much at wide receiver, but Warren is one of those guys that he might as well be a running back too at this point. Speaking of running back, Singleton was back and healthy looking. Katron Allen, chalk of the week last week. Well, one of the chalk guys, I guess. The only reason Katron Allen got there is because he found the end zone, which is fine. That's going to happen sometimes, but now he's priced up a little bit. And then the backfield's just kind of muddled. Allen had 26 snaps to Singleton 16 last week. So I don't know. Corey Smith, a 4-star freshman, saw some time. Maybe it was just because of blowout, but we could see him in the mix a little bit. So I don't know that I can touch his backfield. And then Harrison Wallace is a cheap wide receiver option. He's put a few nice games together recently. If he can consistently do that, I'll take 13 points from a $4,100 wide receiver, especially in the cash streets, just to help me get those running back studs. On the Minnesota side, Max Brosmer, he's 5,500. I don't like the matchup. But at 5,500, it almost might have to at least give him a look. If it's a situation where Minnesota keeps it close and it's the fourth quarter, Brosmer has had a tendency to be able to lead the team down the field. So he might get a few, not garbage time points, but late points. And again, what do you need? 16 points from him, but I don't love it. Darius Taylor's kind of matchup proof because of his involvement in the passing game. I don't know that I could pay 8,500 for him when you have Taj Brooks and Amari and Hampton on your radar too. It's going to be tough to get somebody like Taylor at that price. But like I said, this is the type of game where he could see 9 to 10 receptions on dump offs. And then Daniel Jackson is who you're looking at in the wide receiver room. Jamison Gears has had increased usage lately. He had 9 targets against Rutgers. So maybe some short routes to Gears. Maybe like I said, $3,600 is the only reason I'm even talking about him. But Jackson's really the guy in this wide receiver room, but mostly looking at Warren on the Penn State side and maybe Wallace and then sprinkling Jackson or Gears or something. It's not a great game environment, but Warren is one of those guys that you look at regardless of the slate or the game environment. And Pittsburgh at Louisville, the late afternoon hammer. Pittsburgh with a 25-point team total and 8-point dog on the road. Both of these teams are out, so they're just playing for whatever bowl they're going to go into. Nate Arenell probably still going to start. Eli Holstein hasn't been medically cleared yet. Okay. Desmond Reed, there's nobody left. There's just nobody left in the backfield. Daniel Carter broke his leg. Rodney Hammond's probably not going to play because of the red shirt issue. Derek Davis didn't play much even after Carter went down. Che Nwabuku, maybe you'll see a few snaps, but we saw last week it was the Reed show once Carter went down. 9,500 is a pretty steep price considering the other running backs we've already talked about. Sincere Lee went down with an injury last week, so that gave Day-Day Reynolds an opportunity. If you need a $3,500 wide receiver, he's not the worst option. Mumfield is priced up where it's tough. Williams is on the field a lot. He does get a lot of snaps. It's still Mumfield and Williams 1-2, and Williams saw 14 targets last week, so 4,200 is a pretty fair price on him. Bartholomew had a sweet touchdown last week. Love it when my tight ends get a touchdown. And then, Johnson's the spike guy. On the Louisville side, Tyler Shuck, probably just too expensive on this slate. I know he's in a good spot. It's just hard price to pay. Isaac Brown's status is up in the air. I would venture to guess he doesn't play. Brown didn't sound super optimistic. Duke Watson filled in nicely, 117-3 last week. Keywan Brown, Donald Chaney could still get a few looks. The one thing that's interesting is that Maurice Turner is a guy who's missed quite a bit of time, but it seemed like he was probably healthy enough to play last week, but he didn't. Well, now, since he's only played in 2 games this season, there's only 2 games left in the regular season. He can play in the last 2 games and still keep his red shirt status. So we could see a little bit of Maurice Turner worked in again. And I mean, if that's the case, Duke Watson at 6K, if he's going to be RB1, fine. But then the rest of these guys are just going to be muddled down, especially if Turner plays. Ja'Cory Brooks, still the top option, 8,200, 12 targets, and he had his 300-yard game of the season. Her third 100-yard game of the last 4, not even just of the season. So he's been on a tear recently. 8,200 is just tough. Chris Bell had his first double-digit target game of the season as well, but it was a shootout. You can throw on Pitt. I mean, that's fine. Mark Redmond, consistent 4 to 6 target tight end. The one thing that's interesting from here is that Katoris Hicks got 33 snaps and 4 targets. He outproduced Amari Huggins-Bruce. So again, a cheap wide receiver option that it's gross, very gross, but you might need it this week. So yeah, it's tough. The wide receivers, there's not the clear 3K options this week. There's a few that are like, that's not so bad. Wouldn't feel good on most slates, but with the pricing on these guys, you're gonna, like I said, you're gonna have to make some decisions this week, and that's just fine. Everybody's gonna have to, so it evens out the playing field. This is the Stone, as you can see up here. It's called the Stone, College Football Saturday. This is what the Stone looks like for our SHIPIT Nation members. We color everything so you know who's a cash play, who's high upside. Not cash play, cash consideration. Like nobody can 100% be a cash play. They can just be in cash consideration. And then we have everything you need to know. What's the pass and run defense look like? What is the run pass ratio? How many targets is a guy getting? How many rushes is a guy getting? It just even what time is the game starting? That's underrated to have front and center with everything else that you need, because it does make a difference when you're building your line so you can have a late swap plan. Speaking of late swap plan, that is something we discuss in the Discord at SHIPIT Nation, which is where you can also get the Stone. And right now is the time to join. I think, calendar speaking, we're about halfway through the football season. So there's still plenty of football left. We're just we're still getting into NBA, NHL, MMA is still going strong. Honestly, MMA ships every week. I say it on the video all the time, but it just keeps happening. We've had some NBA shippers here the past few weeks. We've had some, college football world championship qualifiers, a lot of big weeks in the NFL. Everybody's winning. It's not just limited to the people you see on these YouTube videos. It's the entire community having success. And the price is just something you can't beat. We want you to pay for your contests, not your content. So for the entire year of all access, all sports, $699. That's comparatively speaking. Just look at the competition that we have. We keep our prices low for a reason, and it's so that you don't have to break your bank to find ways to get better at DFS. And that's one thing too, is that my picks aren't any better than your picks at college football. We want to teach you process. We want to educate you so that you can get better. See, the education course is right here. Like I said, get the monthly or better, and you get into the Discord community, which is, like one of the best Discord communities I've ever been a part of, if not the best. If you do only want to do a single sport, say you're just a big football fan, you get college football and the NFL. And we discounted the rate for the rest of the season. So you can just get, for the rest of the season for $99. Or if you want the Shiptimizer or Optimizer with it, you can do it for $129. And the nice thing is, if that includes the Super Bowl, that means it includes all of college football bowl season too. So it's a huge value. We cut the price in half, I think, before the halfway point technically of the season. And right now, football, look at next week, we have Thanksgiving. So massive slates on Thanksgiving Day, including a Millie Maker. Black Friday is big in the college football world. We have the third Thanksgiving hangover, I think it's called, in college football. So really, really good contest coming up next week. So it's a perfect time to join, even if you're just doing the football. And just look at the success we're having. Tito with the big win last week. Jay Bannock with another big win. That guy does it. Look at, there's DGen75 with a big win. Marley with a big win. And, all of our members, like I said, we do have some of our creators up here, but all of our members are having success. A lot of first places, the small, big black numbers and the big green numbers. That's exactly what we want to see. So, like I said, join, have fun in the Discord, educate, talk process with everybody. Like I said, that's what we want to teach, is the process. And I want to give a shout out to the college football team. We've been having success all year. The guys that, make it possible for us to do what we do at SHIPIT Nation. I am Robbins, Ham Hawk, Smarty. Of course, we have Monday and the editor behind the scenes, and, the big guy, Degenerate 75, who's been leading the charge. He's been working on swing season in golf. So he's been busy lately too, while we keep the college streets busy and successful. But always remember, rule number one, college football is fun. Enjoy the process. Enjoy building your lineups. Enjoy watching college football. Even if your lineups aren't great, just, feel good that we have the opportunity to play college DFS and watch some good college football. And you know what? Hopefully you're skyrocketing to the top of those leaderboards, and even more so, hopefully I see you there. We'll see you next time. Enjoy this outro.